Well, I guess one way to market your game is to not market it at all and just release it right into early access. At least that's what Hopoo Games have done with Risk of Rain 2, the sequel to the awesome indie roguelike side-scroller released back in 2013. And having spent a fair bit of time with the first one, you could say that I was excited to see it had hit the Steam store page without any kind of warning either. Yeah, I just logged into Steam one day and there this thing was, staring me right in the face along with Hentai Crush, with its overwhelmingly positive rating. And even though the Steam rating system is often full of fickle, hateful and sarcastic reviews, I gotta say that I think that rating is well deserved. Risk of Rain 2 is pretty much just Risk of Rain 1, but in a 3D graphics engine and turned into a satisfyingly punishing third-person shooter. And the most shocking part, it's still in early access and already more than worth the $30 they're asking for it. You even get a free copy of the game to gift to one of your buddies. I mean, talk about clever marketing. Now, the story doesn't matter all that much. In fact, I don't think there even is one at this point, but the gist of the game is that you've crash landed on a planet and simply have to escape. To do this, you move from level to level, killing enemies, leveling up, finding a portal to summon and defeat a boss, then moving on and doing it all over again. This is a roguelike game, so that means when you die for good. The run comes to an end and you start all the way back from the beginning, and you will die a lot. One of the single biggest changes the sequel has made is the shift from a 2D side-scroller to a fully 3D and surprisingly well-optimized engine. And it controls pretty much like your standard third-person shooter, just with a gazillion mechanics for the player to deal with. It's a transition that works really well for the most part, and it doesn't take all that long to get into the swing of things. And if you played the first game, it's all going to seem pretty familiar, down to the characters, enemies, and even the environments themselves. Not to mention the soundtrack, which is still fantastic. I think about the only main thing the game has added in terms of the controls is the option to sprint, which is a welcome addition. Now, it is all a bit odd to the uninitiated, and the first time you start playing, you're probably just going to be thinking how slow and boring everything is. I mean, you pretty much just run around killing things that don't put up all that much of a fight, but it's not long playing until the game goes from looking like this to looking like this. Risk of Rain is unique in the way that it's constantly increasing the player's difficulty level. And the difficulty mode you choose in the character select, among other things, just makes this ramp up a little bit faster. Every level you start with no cash, but as you slowly kill enemies, you'll earn enough to unlock chests scattered randomly around the environment. As the levels go on, the chests become more expensive, but enemies become tougher and drop more cash, so it's an even trade-off. The catch though is that the longer it takes you to finish a level, the tougher the enemies are going to be. So it's this decision the player has to make as to whether or not you're going to blitz your way through a stage and try to make it through before things get too hectic. Or instead you can take your time, earn enough cash to unlock everything and move on to the next level. With the downside being that enemies may potentially be stronger than you are. It all kind of factors into the game's RNG system where no two runs are really ever going to be the same.
Fucking oath.
The layout of each stage is always constant, but the boss you fight and the enemies that are going to spawn in is always going to be completely different. And I think that's what makes the whole thing so addictive and why all I want to do even right after dying is just start over. Now currently there's 6 characters in the game, all of which but one return from Risk of Rain. You've got the Commando, the Multi-Robot, the Huntress, the Engineer and the Mercenary. Then there's the new character which is the Artificer, which is kind of like a mage. You only start off with the Commando though, and unlocking the others can be done by something as simple as playing a certain amount of levels. Or for the case of the Mercenary, you have to find a secret portal available only after finishing a first playthrough. Then even once you've unlocked a character, you still have to play it and get to grips with how it works because all of these characters are vastly different with their own unique abilities. So the Commando's like something of an all-rounder. This guy uses dual pistols and can simply fire them normally. He can rapid fire, he can fire a piercing shot or do a dodge roll to avoid damage. Multi is a robot with a nail gun that has the option to equip 2 deployable items at once and also launch out little grenades. The Huntress uses a bow and simply locks onto the nearest target, or she can throw out a homing glaive that bounces from enemy to enemy. And I'd say she's probably my favourite character at the moment simply because of her mobility. And also because she's dummy thick.
Fucking oath.
The Engineer is one of the trickier ones to get the hang of, and this one is more reliant on his turrets for dealing out damage. But he can also drop down a protective shield and fire out a cluster of grenades, or drop a bunch of proximity mines on the ground. Then the Mercenary is every fedora-wearing edgelord's wet dream, teleporting around the place with a katana and slicing things to pieces. Yeah, nothing personal. Then finally the Artificer is the glass cannon, able to shoot out a bunch of super powerful spells that deal pretty hefty damage. Just kind of with the downside that she can be put out of commission really easily due to her just having bugger all health points. Still though, regardless of who you choose, the gameplay is always going to be the same. Run around, kill shit, loot chests for items, fight the boss. Repeat until you either acquire so much stuff the game becomes easy mode, or you get horribly killed in a single hit, which is more likely. And this is where the RNG aspect of the game comes into play. Now there's literally dozens of these items you can find in chests, and a lot of them have to be unlocked through achievements before they even appear in game in the first place. And these are broken up into commons, uncommons and rare, as well as consumable items which work off cooldowns. In Risk of Rain 1 there were like cheat sheets that showed off all of the items at once, but even then, looking at it from a glance, it was often confusing as to what item did what. And most of the items returning in this sequel are taken from that first game. Like the missile launcher, the crowbar, the medkit, and the ukulele. I mean, you gotta have the ukulele, right? And I really like it how all the items you pick up, you can actually now see physically attached to your character, which just kind of adds a lot to the charm of the whole thing. But like before, some of these items are objectively better than others, and they make a run far easier. Like the glasses that increase your critical hit chance, or the syringe that increases your attack speed. Like these make an instant and noticeable difference. The thing is though, you've obviously got no control over which ones the game gives you. And this I think is the aspect that's gonna piss off a lot of people. In the first game they had this modifier you could unlock which allowed you to choose which item you got from a chest when you opened it. But this one isn't in this game at the current point, so until it is, if they even choose to add it in, you're really just at the mercy of whatever the game throws at you. And it's for this reason that I don't find the co-op as much fun as the single player. I mean, yeah, you can play with up to 4 people in Risk of Rain 2, but my problem with this is that not only are the items you get still a complete roll of the dice, but you're also having to share those items with the other people you're playing with. Because like the first game, loot has to be shared with everyone equally. So say if there's like 8 chests in a level, ideally each person is going to get 2, right? But what this means is your chances of finding the items you want out of complete chance are now even less. Co-op is definitely more fun though. I mean, most games are more fun with friends, but I think Risk of Rain 2 really loses a bit of its ludicrous nature when you have to share these items with other people. That progression of building your character into this overpowered tsunami that just zips around and obliterates everything is a much slower journey. And it's kind of odd how the co-op backfires in that way. Part of what I think made Risk of Rain so fun is stacking all of these items and pretty much breaking the game. In the first game you could have a build where basically every single ability was constantly available, through items that made critical hits either reduce or reset cooldowns entirely. I mean, shit, you could even get to the point where every single elite enemy had a high chance at dropping a chest. You'd just start picking up items you didn't even want or need. Some people have also said that this game is too hard solo, which I found to be the complete opposite. I found it way easier in the single player than the multiplayer. But we are living in an age where people are complaining about video games being too challenging, so this doesn't really shock me. All I can say to that is get good or get out. At least now though, to get a co-op match going, you don't need to set up a Hamachi server, which was a royal pain in the ass. The only other thing that I'd bring up as sort of a complaint, which is a bit of an issue with the 3D camera, is that a lot of the enemies have attacks that work off line of sight. That being, if they can see you, they can hit you. And if you're out in the open and a bunch of these guys attacking you at once, it's bad news. This wasn't so much of an issue in the first game because the whole thing was obviously 2D and pretty zoomed out. So you could always see every immediate threat and know the locations of enemies at all times. But now though, you often can't see something if you're not facing in its direction, and it's common to get blindsided. And this becomes more of an issue later in the game when you often get schwacked by certain enemy types.
Schwacked.
I mean look, death is a common mechanic of the game and that's fine, but getting killed by something you couldn't even see for the sheer fact that you couldn't see it is really annoying. The Division 2 had this really cool mechanic where instead of being one-shotted, you'd instead take critical damage. Basically, this meant that you were on death's door, and if you didn't get out of harm's way really quickly, the next hit that you took was going to kill you. And I think Risk of Rain 2 could benefit from having some form of this as well, because simply just being unlucky and taking that one hit that manages to obliterate you is a bit of a cheap shot. Just one of a bunch of things I hope they'll add in future updates. Like for instance, I'd really like them to add the option in to save a run and to not have to end it. Now I know this was the case in the first game, but sometimes I just want to keep going to see how long I can go for. The simple option to save and quit would just be awesome. I think the co-op mode also needs the option to drop items for other players. I had a fair few times when I accidentally picked up something that was meant for a friend and I had no means of dropping it to give it back to them. Sometimes though, you might just want to trade out items with another player. A modifier where loot could be split up evenly to every player would be really good too, so that everyone could get the contents of a chest. I also think the Artificer needs a bit of work. Unlocking this character is really time consuming. You need to find 10 Lunar Coins, which are a rare form of currency that drop at complete randomness and very sporadically. And then even then you need to spend one of these coins to access the portal to buy the character, so technically you need 11 coins. For all of this effort, you unlock a glass cannon that just has 0 mobility and gets shredded by everything you come across. Once you get some items to increase your movement speed, it's a lot easier, but it's really tough starting out. And I think they either need to buff the health points or give it some kind of dodge move, because right now this class is extremely item dependent. But really that's all I have to say about it, because there's very little things here to not like about Risk of Rain 2. As shocking as it might be to believe I haven't been paid to do this video, I just had a genuinely good time with it. And it's always good to see a game doing well under the moniker of being in early access. It's shocking too how a game made with what I'm assuming is a shoestring budget is more fun than a lot of other big budget third person shooters I've played in recent memory. I mean, not naming names, but it starts with an A and ends in Anthem. All you need to know is that Risk of Rain 2 is fucking awesome. And anyone who's not a complete pussy and likes a game that's going to repeatedly beat them over the head should definitely pick this one up. Dying in a video game has never been this much fun.